call the meeting to order. Karen, would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Young,
Here.
Commissioner Batty, Commissioner Miller, Commissioner Keen,
Here.
Commissioner Brink, Commissioner Kubal,
Here.
and Chair Gerard.
Here. We ask if you're able to please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. It's non-debatable. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Chair is looking for a motion to approve the Planning Commission minutes from October 13th, 2021.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? I have one correction. If we can go to page 12, I believe it is in the packet. Let's see if I'm right here. I'm trying to find it, Karen. Give me a second.
Okay.
And the number 12, where is this?
12, you're down, page 12, you're down into the first conditional use permit.
The fence.
Yeah.
Yes, that one.
But no, if you're in the minutes, that's gonna be up 9 or sooner.
Wanted to be in 12. There's a word that I want corrected, and this sounds terrible. I said it was on page 12, and it doesn't look like that, so maybe I'll just shut up and,
No. The minutes need to be correct, sir.
I didn't write down for what it was. But there's, somewhere in the minutes, we used the word continent, and I think we wanted contingent. I thought there was a big enough difference.
Yes.
Okay, where is that?
Can you search for that word?
But
Keep,
that's
Karen,
be,
can you do a search? I don't think that it'll let us do that.
I do not have them pulled up here.
Hang on a second.
Let me take a look.
it is on page 8, under number 12, first paragraph, last sentence.
Page 8?
Yep, I
Okay.
see it.
Yep, he noted that the requirements of the watershed are continent,
They're contingent. You're
should be contingent there.
catch.
Normally on the, I don't correct little stuff, but
Nope.
that one's, when you get the 3 syllables, it kind of throws me. That's the only change I have. Any other discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
And Karen, those would be the minutes as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. First up is 794 15th Street Southwest, a CUP request for a fence. This was tabled from our October 13th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Just a note that we held the public hearing at the last meeting, so we won't officially have a public hearing, but we traditionally will take input if someone wants to speak to the matter. So with that, I believe, Nathan, you are presenting?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So again, the property address for the subject property here, 794 15th Street Southwest. As we discussed at the last meeting, as background, were identified two improvements to the property that were done without having first received the correct permitting, going through the right process. The first was the installation of a fence. And that is the reason for this conditional use permit request. The other was an improvement to the parking lot surface on the property. And just as an update on that one, the property owner has been informed that site plan review is the correct process to go through to get those improvements permitted correctly, so that's what he'll be doing. So that will be at an upcoming planning commission meeting for your review. And then, so back to this item. So in a business or industrial zoning district, to install a fence over 4 feet in height and on one of these properties, you need to apply for a conditional use permit to do so. At the last meeting, the planning commission tabled this item with the intent to bring it back as an interim use permit. Following that, I contacted the city attorney just to see whether that was an option for the planning commission, and because a conditional use permit is the process that's prescribed in code, the correct process for this application is and would remain a conditional use permit. The intent of an interim use permit is primarily for uses that are not that are currently seen as acceptable, but in the long term they're not. So that's just kind of to summarize the ordinance there. But that's the only real update that I have for you on this item. I'm happy to take any questions that the commission has.
Commissioners, Susan?
Sure, and Nathan, as part of the site plan process, do you anticipate that they will need or be requesting additional changes that would come under a conditional use permit purview?
So the other improvements on the site are pretty much just the parking lot, and I didn't identify any aspects of the parking lot in a review of that that would require a conditional use permit.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess it wouldn't have hurt my feelings to, since they went through this in such a bass-backwards way, it wouldn't have hurt my feelings to have made them come back with a second conditional use permit fee. I did want to be reasonable and just make sure that there wouldn't be other issues. Thank you.
Other questions? Mike?
So the fence in the front, I drove through it today, the fence in the front, they're gonna allow it to stay where it's at, or,
That's up to us.
but not tonight?
Yeah,
That is
that's
up
what
to
the
that,
discussion
okay.
is tonight, is granting a conditional use permit for the fence as built.
Okay.
And
The way Nathan just made it sound is like they're gonna come back.
they will be back on a site plan review,
Okay,
basically unrelated to the fence.
okay.
So the fence, we try to take care of tonight. And then the rest comes later, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, these are being processed kind of separately. Yep.
So if I understand this correctly, we're going to go back to the continuous use permit that they originally submitted for and take a vote on whether we approve that or not, correct?
Correct. Yep, that'll be the entire vote if,
And then what happens if, since the fence is up, if it gets disapproved, is there a certain amount of time that somebody has to comply with that?
so there's a couple steps here. First, this will be continuous use permits. We are not the final. We will make a recommendation to the city council, and they will make the final decision. So that's how, regardless of what our decision is, it will still go to them for the final decision. They often, very often, back what the planning commission has decided, but not always.
So ultimately, what we're deciding is a recommendation, not approval or disapproval.
We're giving the city council our input on what we think should happen
Okay.
as a commission. Now, there is some, and Nathan can probably explain this better, to some extent, this is somewhat of a given for a CUP because they've met all the requirements of a CUP. Is that?
Yeah, I was able to find out a little bit more about that specifically today, and essentially, if the planning commission seeks to deny a conditional use permit, it needs to make a finding. It needs to essentially establish a finding that would be the reason for its denial. So it would need to establish one of the criteria that are listed in the staff report.
Okay.
It would need to identify as not being acceptable.
And the staff didn't find any reason to deny it, correct?
That's correct. The findings that the staff established in the report do support recommendation.
Any other questions for staff?
I guess I will probably move approval of the conditional use permit, but there are a couple of findings that I disagree with. Finding F, if granted a conditional use permit, well, if we grant the conditional use permit, then the fence will conform with applicable zoning requirements, but it does not at this time. So in order to conform, it will need the conditional use permit. And I'm not sure that I would agree that the fence is in accordance with the policies of the comp plan.
That's,
But I think that those are relatively minor. And I'd like the thoughts of the others before I make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit request for the property at 794 15th Street Southwest.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I want to discuss it. So
Well,
I'm not gonna-
I'll second
I'm not
it
gonna
so that,
second it.
I will second it so that we can discuss it.
So we have a motion and a second. Before I open it, is that per the four staff recommendations?
Yes.
Discussion on the motion? Mike?
If this gets denied tonight, man, it's really close to the street. You know, it's 6 feet high, it's big, it's got the huge double gate and everything. I don't know, putting something up without even going halfway through the motions, yeah, I'm not all in favor of it right now, but I'd hate to see them have to tear it down and move it back or something, but if that's what we have to do, that's what we're gonna do, so.
Mr. Chair, I would say that having a neighborhood meeting after we approve a conditional use permit does not serve any purpose. And so I would seek to amend the motion so that staff recommendation 1 is not there, or is deleted. I don't see holding a neighborhood meeting after we have made a decision does not tell anybody in the neighborhood that we're going to listen to what they say, because we've already made the decision. And holding the neighborhood meeting is not helpful to the applicant either.
Would a site plan review trigger a neighborhood meeting?
No.
Could have said yes.
And it's an industrial area there, so a neighborhood meeting probably won't bring anybody here.
The fence would be permitted 6 foot tall if he backed it up about 25 feet. I mean, he would have complied completely. But now the fence is up, and if I understand it right, he has, even if the fence wasn't up, if he meets all of the requirements of the CUP, he gets one. So whether or not it's correct or not, he gets the CUP.
No, we decide if he gets the conditional use permit.
We can set the conditions of
Yes.
it, but he gets the CUP.
No, we can deny the request. We can deny a request for a conditional use permit. We have to decide on what basis we are denying the request. But we do have the ability to deny the request. And that would be our recommendation to the council, that they also deny the request for the conditional use permit and have him, as part of his site plan and arrangements for the site, deal with the fence. Now, he has the ability to appeal, and we would have to determine under what findings we have justification to deny.
He kind of gets an auto appeal just because it goes to the council. Nathan, you had a comment?
I think that my comment was covered already in Chair, or Commissioner Young's comments.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand what we're talking about here. We have a motion before us that approves, that's asking us to approve the continual use permit based on the report the report that we were given by the city. And I'm hearing Susan say there's something that you want to take out of this or kind of use as the reason to deny the continual,
It's a conditional use permit, not
Mhm.
continual.
okay,
It's conditional. All right, and what I'm saying is that your motion was to include the 4 staff recommendations. So he would obtain the conditional, we would recommend, yes, you will be granted your conditional use permit. And my comment is, and my wish for an amendment is, that having a neighborhood meeting after we have granted the conditional use permit is not appropriate, and I believe.
I agree with you. Now-
Wait a minute, and I believe that we are able to waive that particular requirement as a planning commission.
I believe you are, yes. The requirement for neighborhood meetings?
I will accept that as a friendly amendment.
Patrick, do you have a different thought about that?
No, I don't, actually. I was just talking about a condition on a fence. The council wants to, sorry.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the neighborhood meeting is a part of the process for a conditional use permit. This improvement was made before the process even started, so point well taken that a neighborhood meeting may not be necessary. There was a public hearing actually held with this item, and we didn't have any members of the public that responded to staff, or I believe, I don't recall anyone showing up for a comment on that item.
No, there were no comments. on it.
Okay.
So there was no meeting then here, last meeting?
Yeah,
Last meeting, there wasn't a public meeting, though.
There was a public hearing,
Oh, yeah.
but nobody commented.
Okay.
Other discussion on the motion? So to reiterate, we have a motion to recommend the city council approval of the conditional use permit with following the conditions 2, 3, and 4. We are striking number 1. With that said, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
And I'm not sure how the city, council, staff, administration can make it clear to folks in the future that this is not appropriate. And as our police chief would say, ignorance is no excuse. And this fence company knew freaking better, and the applicant knew freaking better. They just hoped that we would ignore them.
Thank you. Before we get to item 7, we have a guest this evening, sitting up next to Nathan. We maybe have an introduction if she jumps in, but she's welcome too, but
No, thank you. My name is Jane Cancer. I'm a planner with Bolton and Mank. I'm really kind of here just to give Nathan a little moral support. And we have talked about many of these issues, so just a little backup here. And I have worked with the city before we did their comprehensive plan. And I know Susan sat on our task force, which seems like many years ago right now.
Well, and the MXR discussion is a big piece of that, because that was added on after the task force and after the planning commission had approved and sent forward the comp plan. And so that will be part of the eventual discussion on the MXR.
Well, welcome. I think Nathan could have used your help a couple weeks ago with
I was online and watching, and I
She
couldn't
was-
figure out how to get in.
She was on Zoom, so we had her present if we had any questions that absolutely Jane had to answer.
Well,
so.
welcome. Feel free to butt in anytime.
Good to see you again.
Next up is item 7. It's 880 18th Street Southeast, a minor subdivision request. Again, we had tabled this from our October 13th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Nathan, I believe you're bringing us through this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is another very familiar item. The only real change to discuss is that the applicants took the suggestion of the Planning Commission and amended the boundaries of their proposed lots. So parcel B, on which the home and the driveway run, now contains the driveway as well. So parcel A, the new parcel, will not include a shared driveway. It is still over 15,000 square feet, so it does meet the minimum, or the minimum lot size.
Can you put that up on the
I
screen,
can,
please?
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm bringing it up right now.
Is that the latest survey?
Yeah, there's on the staff report, there are 3 surveys. I doctored up the first one, and that was just in anticipation of these changes. And the 3rd survey that you can see that I'm bringing up and Karen's gonna put on the screen, this one is the newly submitted survey, so. There we go. Okay, so if you can see the cursor, the new property boundary runs from right here down to the southern boundary of the property. So now this driveway here for parcel B is on parcel B.
And there was some discussion on why we didn't want to do that 2 weeks ago, and the city has resolved whatever that issue was.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, the planning commission was looking for to not have a shared drive.
Right.
And
You know why we started this application with the shared drive, or is that just how it?
that's how the application came in. They were just proposing to have the shared drive for parcel B on parcel A. So looks like they took the suggestion.
Susan?
Mr. Chair, a couple of the comments had some concerns about additional driveways near the park, and so that was the concern that I think that you remember. But I think that this will be not only a better situation for y'all, it will make the lot much easier to sell, and then it will also, I think that the way that you'll set it up will be good for the neighborhood too. Thank you for making the adjustment. Appreciate that.
Can we scroll up to see all the parcel that the home is on? Because in the staff recommendations, number 3, there's some of this aggregate base to be removed.
Yes.
Do we have a little more direction for me maybe?
Yeah, so I believe the applicants have addressed at least a portion of that comment. As they're here this evening, I would encourage you to have them answer that question for you as to how that's been addressed since the previous meeting.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, please come up, and we're going to ask you once again to state your name and address for the record.
Lori Scher.
Mike Kipka.
The issue with the aggregate was many years ago, there apparently was drainage that ran along the lot line that goes all the way from the driveway straight past. And that's what he wanted, is to have a drainage area through there again. So we removed some of the aggregate and put seed down so that it will be drainage again.
And we met with, I'm sorry, I forget his name, but
The,
City
Ryan?
Engineer Ryan Goodman.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
we met him on site and he
yeah,
personally
pointed out
showed us what he
needed
wanted,
from
and I
us.
said, I'll take care of it, and we took care of it. We put some seed mat down on it last night for the rain that's coming
Yeah.
now. We put seed under it also, so next spring it should be
Looking good.
doing what it should be doing.
And Ryan's happy?
Yes,
Because when Ryan's happy, we're usually happy.
he's an NDSU boy too, and I like that.
Well, we tend to forgive that.
Oh, okay.
And then are there, it looks like there might be some additional outbuildings out there, sheds? Are
No,
we-
everything was removed.
What you were probably seeing was boats, pontoon boats.
They
that,
were
you know,
wrapped and stored there.
We just, let our neighbors
Store boats.
for over the winter.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions for the applicant, as long as they're here?
I think your neighbor will be happy that his basement doesn't flood anymore.
Yeah, whatever happens down the road with the builder, they'll have to come in with their permits. And-
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Well, that will take a site plan.
yep,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah.
absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I'd asked if anyone wishes to comment on this, even though we don't have a public hearing. Is there anyone, Karen, that you have? All right. Any other questions, comments, or otherwise, I'm looking for a motion. Susan?
So oh, did you say
Go ahead,
Susan?
I haven't
Go ahead,
said
Mike.
anything.
You sound like Susan.
So this is the latest survey, the one you're showing right here?
That is correct. So, yeah, you can see the
And that's
most
the,
recent.
that's the new property marker right there where your arrow is?
Yep.
Okay, because I wasn't here for the last meeting, so I'm just, I mean, I went through everything, I've driven by it. Okay.
It will be restaked this Friday. The survey is
Oh.
done.
With the corner marker.
The corner.
Oh, that's fine, as long as they have it here, and we're seeing it here, that's fine. I just, I did a drive-by, but, yeah.
It will be restaked
Okay.
Friday.
Susan?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we approve the minor subdivision request for the property and contingent upon them completing these 7 staff recommendations.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Good luck with your project.
And whoever buys it, please make sure that they get the right permits ahead of time.
All right, we are on to our number 8, our MXR1 discussion. I believe Nathan's going to lead us in a little bit of knowledge and information for all of us to get us on page. Did I do something wrong?
Oh, just this other.
Sorry, I'm trying to bring up my presentation that I have prepared here, so bear with me for a second.
This is MXR1 discussion.
I printed this off of the city's website today.
Okay, here it is.
Karen?
What?
Did we have the MXR1 not on the agenda online?
I pulled this off of the city's website this afternoon. And 8 was other, and 9 was agenda.
Because it's on my agenda, so I don't
I
know.
see that.
And it is on the
That's the
packet
October
to just
27th.
show, yeah?
I'll
We-
try harder next time. Get my spelling corrected and get
Yeah.
that on the agenda. I'm not sure, because it's on my agenda, so I don't know.
But I'm
Am
sure.
I missing it?
Must not have been on mine, I don't know.
No, well, you're missing a lot of things, but not that. But I'm sure you read the other 30 pages of the packet, so you're prepped, ready to laugh. All right, it's all yours, Nathan.
Thank you, Chair. So I've just prepared just kind of a brief presentation, hopefully brief, to help provide a little bit of context for your discussion as the Planning Commission explores potentially changing some of the standards for the MXR1 zone. So I'll get started. My goal with this presentation is really to provide an overview for you. Going to touch very briefly on demographics, look at the comprehensive plan, what it says about this particular land use category, and then get a little bit more into the weeds in the zoning district. So on the screen, you can see a graph that I borrowed from the Met Council's website. This is on Forest Lake's community profile. This shows the population as it has grown since 1970 and each decade with the census. Very recently, actually, the new 2020 census information was released, and the city of Forest Lake is sitting at 20,611 with that census count. And it's projected to, in the lifetime of the comprehensive plan, at least this projection shows a future population in 2040 of 28,000, almost 29. Just one more figure that I usually find to be a little bit more enlightening is the average household size. In the last 4 decades now, this has been declining. It is now estimated at 2.52. Okay, so the comprehensive plan, if you are not familiar, this is the, on the right side of this slide is the cover of it. But within the comprehensive plan, there are a number of different chapters. Chapter 2 is the land use chapter. It's a very important chapter for the Planning Commission and for planning and zoning. In that chapter, there are identified goals that the city has generally, and I've paraphrased them pretty heavily here on this slide just to get them all on the same slide. Trying to balance preserving existing land uses with providing new opportunities for new development, both residential, commercial, industrial, protecting natural resources, but also balancing the need for extraction in the case of aggregates, or preserving agricultural uses, and then also lastly preserving the ecological function of Forest Lake's environment. So jumping into the comp plan here, the community designation for Forest Lake is actually split between 2 categories that are recognized by the Met Council. The first one is called Emerging Suburban Edge. And you can see here on the map on this slide, this is the more tan color that encompasses Forest Lake's downtown, along with the corridors, the 35W corridor. And then the other area, which surrounds the city, sort of is the agricultural community designation. So just as an overview, specifically as it relates to the MXR1, there is a future land use category that's defined by the comp plan as low to medium density residential. This future land use category is identified as residential purposes, including 1-family homes, both detached and attached, and 2-family homes. Open or park space may be included within or adjacent to be related to residential development. And the density range is indicated as 3 to 6 units per acre. Oops. Okay. Moving on. Probably one of the more important parts of the land use chapter is the future land use map. You can see that on the slide here. This has all of guidance for the entire city and land in the city for future land uses. You can see the red box here is on low to medium density residential. Again, that's the classification for MXR1, and you can see that a large amount of land in the city, in the center of the city to the south, is guided for MXR1, as well as some land in the northwest corner of the city. Getting a little bit more specific, one chart that I found to be pretty helpful in thinking about this is the table 2-13, which is guided land use acres for developable land uses. And I've put in a box here this future land use category. And in 2016, it was estimated that almost 19,000 developable acres existed for low to medium density residential. And in 2040, it's estimated that there will only be 941. Table 2-14 also is helpful. This shows that of all of the anticipated residential development, almost 60% is estimated to be in that future land use category, the low to medium density residential. So on the slide here, you can see the current zoning for the city of Forest Lake. And you can see that this tan color here, which represents MXR1, encompasses a lot of that land, which is also in that future land use category, low to medium residential. So to dive into the city code, the purpose is identified on this slide. I don't need to go through this for you. I'm sure you probably read it, but one of the important parts of this particular section is that it requires the mix of detached and attached housing units to be 60% single family and a maximum of 40% attached or detached townhouse. On this slide, you can see the standards for the MXR1 zoning district. They differ based on the type of lot that's being proposed. So single-family lots have a lot area, as you know, of 15,000 down to 7,500 for detached products. None if there's an HOA present. And then you can see the other lot standards here. This is really all I had prepared in terms of an overview for the discussion this evening, but I did also provide a couple thoughts on maybe next steps after the discussion that I'm happy to talk about, but I'd stand for any questions you have or any comments you have for me.
Commissioner Susan?
Since this comp plan was put together, the city has permitted and developers have built a very significant number of apartment dwelling units, which would be high-density dwelling units. And as part of this discussion, I want to make sure that we have a current count of the number of units in that classification, and the number of units that we anticipate within the next 3 to 5 years. There's not a whole lot of areas left, but we are getting conditional use plan requests, and we are getting requests for those. And that is a significant number of dwelling units.
So you're looking for a forecast of apartment units specifically?
Current number and a forecast.
Okay.
The other thing that I want us to think about is, if we do an MXR1, are we going to include accessory dwelling units in the MXR1? One of the things that we've been asked to consider, and that is important to me that we consider, are accessory dwelling units. And if we have smaller lots and a higher density, and then you add an accessory dwelling unit to that, are the accessory dwelling units to be considered part of the original density, or are they in addition to the density? Do you see? And accessory dwelling units, the mother-in-law flat, the kid moving home.
That's what I was gonna.
Yeah, all right. The tiny house in the backyard, those things are accessory dwelling units that nationally we're seeing more and more of, regionally we're seeing more and more of. Donovan knows that I am very frustrated by the illegal one that's on my street.
Get over it, Susan, move on.
I'm working on it. If they didn't have so many other violations, it would be easier. But when we're looking at the ordinances, I kind of want to know what we're thinking as to whether accessory dwelling units would be part of the density or not. They're often considered, it's part of the house. It's a 4-bedroom house, so we've got room for accessory dwelling units. Is that part of the density or The other thing is that when the planning commission included the MXR, we were not looking at the very large amount of land that is now on the planning commission map as MXR. And so I really want the city, and I'm talking, when I say the city, I mean not only us and not only the council, but also the residents. What do the residents want to see Forest Lake 5, 10, 20 years from now? That's a lot of density in a significant area, and it will very greatly change the tone and character of the community. That can be good, that can be not good. It's not gonna change where I am, all right? Out in the Loon Two Bullies, but that is something that we need to think about. And from the council's perspective, that kind of density comes with significant costs that do not pay for themselves in the value of the home. And the developers that we've talked to here, who have been talking about properties and wanting additional density, they're not talking about affordable housing on those properties. They've been talking to us in the 500,000 and up, which is not considered affordable. So what a lot of communities are saying is, if we get more density, we'll have affordable housing, and so that's how we'll get affordable housing. I don't hear that happening here. So if we are looking at this kind of density, when we write our rules, do we want to talk about percentage affordable, or how we're gonna look at that?
It's a wide open discussion, so you don't have to raise your hand. I'm not sure that other communities are necessarily discussing what I would call the big A affordable housing, the 80% AMI or something. I think they're really discussing less expensive housing, because there's nothing in the metro that's affordable. Right? And it's almost impossible to, in this district, to hit any kind of a goal for affordable, the big A affordable housing.
In new structures, anything built
New structure, that's right.
15 years ago and more are coming in at affordable.
But for what we're looking at
Right.
is new development, and so it's small A affordable. It's gonna be less expensive. And I think where you're gonna end up with the big A affordable housing is gonna be in a different zone that allows greater density, the 8 units built together to try to even square up, to get it even lower cost. Great article in the Sunday paper on affordable housing, so it's an ugly scenario.
It is.
You know, but I think what we're really looking at here is a less expensive housing, term I would use.
How do you, less expensive than what?
Than what it would have been if we don't increase the density.
I don't believe that. I think that what we've heard from the developers is, I want more density, but it's not so that I can build a house that is less than $500,000. That is not what the developers are telling us. It's not what they told us, a few weeks ago.
Those guys, when we had the joint meeting, they were talking substantially less than $500,000. One of them guys was at a $300,000 complex, another.
And they were making the lots smaller and
Smaller.
further away from the street. So obviously, I think if the house is further from the street and the sidewalk in there, you're not gonna be able to build, the mother-in-law house in the back and stuff. But if they do, is this what you were trying to get at? Is like for the sewer and water, the extra utilities in that neighborhood?
Firefighters, police, the water, stormwater effects. Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, and planners,
It's
I
coming.
think right now APA is saying a residential home costs the city about 1.5 times what the city receives in taxes.
Yeah, it's traditionally, residential homes don't
They don't
pay for their
themselves.
services, they just don't. And they do about 1.6, I think it was, percent, they do cost the city more than they get back in taxes, no doubt about it.
So that ties into affordability, is, what are your property taxes? That's a big piece on affordability.
Can I ask where the shortcomings from the single-family homes is coming from? Because it has to get paid for somehow, so where's the money coming from? Is it being burdened over to businesses, or is it to the apartments, or?
Oh. When we say services, that means police, fire, public works, plowing, water, well, the water and sewer takes care of itself, basically, water pays for itself. But it's in the tax levy, because the city has very little other sources of revenue besides its own tax levy. There's some state shared revenues, and some fees, but for the most part, it's all tax levy revenue. And, and when you say it's 1.6%, but on the other hand is when you have commercial development that pays for itself quite a bit. So but we're pretty much, right now, we're not getting a big boom in commercial development anywhere. And, we had the commercial development at 35 in Broadway, but the rest of that hasn't come yet, so. But it's all in the proper tax levy.
So basically, the folks that are here now pick up that slack. The article on Cottage Grove, basically, they're looking at significant boom because they've got a couple of really big, high-tax commercial properties, industrial properties that have come into the city, that help support that.
Mhm.
But I don't think that they're looking at, I haven't looked at their code, I'm sorry, I should have. I don't know what their lots are.
I bet you we got a guy here who could tell us that.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it was in Donovan's presentation.
I don't think Cottage Grove was.
Are you referring to like the list of peer communities that Donovan was, yeah, that would have been in the last packet.
There was discussion at some of the developers when we had a joint meeting of, we build on 10,000 square foot lot, we got 8,000, somebody knew someone who's got a 5,000 or a 4,000, which is what, I had a 5,000 in St. Paul when I lived there. It's plenty fine, but you're not gonna build a 3-car garage, 2,000 square foot house on it. Story and a half thousand foot square house and a single car garage, and it was fine. But that's what you get on a small lot. But we were curious what percentage of coverage was on those lots and what were they actually building. I think Ramsey was the one that they kept bringing up, is got some development with about 5,000 square foot lots or 4,300 square foot lots, which, again, I got no problem with but there's no context to it. There's just, it's a lot.
And it was a very, very small percentage of the area of the city.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not like this.
Well, this is why we're having this discussion, because this is big.
But they could have, an area of the smaller ones and another area of the mediums and another area of the larger ones.
Absolutely.
So I think a good mix in there would be great.
Well, when you look at our topography, we can't build 3 to an acre now, even where we allow, because we have 15,000 square foot lots. That only leaves 560 square feet for all of the public structure on an acre. Our average lot in the MXR1 currently is lower density than single-family residential, if you look at the chart. I don't know exactly how that number comes up there.
And me either, but what we're seeing now is not what we'd be looking at, 6 to 8 per acre. That's significantly different. And they're all gonna want a freaking variance, because they're all gonna want a 3-car garage.
Well, I think, that's,
But not everybody.
you can't always get what you want. The Rolling Stones have been singing that for 40 years.
Well, that's why you get the balance in there of, the smaller homes, the medium homes, then the larger homes. Those that want the 3-car garage, you're gonna be up over here. You want just a 1-car garage or a 2-car garage, small 2 or something. Then you get the smaller homes, and a lot of the people, like our population's declining. Not necessarily all their toys are declining, but I think there's gotta be a mix in there somewhere. Happy mix.
And Nathan, we're going from 2.6 to 2.4?
Average household size. The new
2.6.
number is 2.52, but where it's coming from,
It was 2.6.
2.6, yes.
And I don't consider that a really big decrease in household size.
No.
An extra cat. Well, it's hard to have 2/10 of a kid.
Not even going there.
Yeah, we're not even.
But I think the consumer also needs to realize that this isn't HGTV when they go house shopping. I mean, we're on just utopia now with 3% interest rates, and you can get a pretty decent large house. Back in, when I bought my first house, I bought in St. Paul because the rate was only 12.7, 12.75%. I mean, it was a deal. When I bought here in 1990, it was 10%. So expectations of the consumer, and this goes to the 3-car garage, they're gonna want 3, but reality is, you might only get 2 and one's gonna park in the driveway.
But what our developers told us was, they're not building what folks should be buying. They're business people, and they are building what they can sell. And what they can sell are the 3 cars and the multiple, the 4-bedroom, and that's what they are, they're building what they can sell.
At $500,000.
Yeah, and so,
And they're selling them.
and I don't see that they will not build that on a smaller lot because they know they can sell that. But is that what the city, what I'm asking is, I know what the consumer wants, I know what the developer wants, but what I'm asking is, where do we as a city want to be? And what do we want to be, and what do we want to look like as a community? That's the question.
I'm with you. You don't have the answer?
Not yet. Working on it.
Geneva?
Well, actually, I mean, I'm kind of wondering how any one of us would decide what the residents want. We all know what we personally might want, or we personally think that they might want just because they live by us. But unless you really ask a resident, you don't really know what the residents want. And I've actually been starting to ask my neighbors and people I work with and come in contact with, what's your vision for Forest Lake? What are you afraid of? What are you hoping for? And some of the people have similar ideas about basic concepts, but then when it comes to the finer things, they don't want this or they don't want that, and I would have thought they would have been more similar. And I think age has a lot to do with what people want as well. People who are more in their retirement years are probably not wanting things that might be considered great to help the city grow. So who are we speaking to? How are we getting that information? And how are we going to share it so we can build a consensus with all the residents of Forest Lake to say, we've listened to everybody, we've understood all the needs, and we also want to, we want to help our city grow, we want to have a good tax base, we want crime to remain low. How, we can do that maybe if we have this, whatever this is. And it might not have anything to do with what I personally want, and it might not even have anything to do with lot size or setbacks or things like that. So we do need to start really talking to our residents and getting them to meetings and getting the word out there so we can have them, I guess, get up in arms about an idea to flush out what that up in arms is and maybe avoid it, or maybe suggest what you're afraid of isn't something you need to be afraid of. I think that's what we need to do instead of guessing. Just really try to flush it out from the community, because we do want our community to grow. So that's my 2 cents.
I'm good.
What's this?
What's that mean?
No,
You're okay with the status quo? You want-
I agree to a point, but also the people moving here are not residents already. So we can talk to our residents or the contractors, which we had that meeting a little while back, but Geneva, you weren't here for that. That would have been a good one to sit in on. Where the contractors, were the one upstairs.
Yeah, I wonder if we taped it.
Yeah, we take
Where the
it.
contractors were telling, like, this is what the people are wanting in a new home. And because it changes from year to year. So it's like the smaller lots, but the big garages, they want to be able to park their toys somewhere. And that's kind of the way it was going down. But there's also, those that want the bigger homes, those that want the medium. But right now, the call is for the smaller homes or more apartments and things like that. But what does the city want? Development.
Well, and there's a
It'd be nice to
fairly
get some commercial.
loud cry that there's nowhere to move to when you're a senior.
Mhm.
We don't have detached townhomes, we don't have that many condos you could buy if you wanted to, so there's been a fair amount of people looking.
And that was all brought up at that meeting, but those are the developers telling us this. And you have to take that with some sort of, grain of salt. They're the ones, they're not gonna invest in a big development and not sell it. So, I mean, we already saw what happened down down by the License Bureau and all that. What was that, Pulte Homes years ago, but they got hit at a bad time and,
That was the recession.
yep.
By the
But I
way.
mean, they had planned on or was that Pratt?
Brett,
One of them.
I found the original. I have the original PUD application. That's
Are you a hoarder?
Only
Don't
of
answer
certain
that
things.
question.
Only of certain tack. Okay, horse tack and some documents that might help me in the future.
Jack is-
Chair Gerard, just for record and reference, that meeting was on September 13th, and it was recorded. So you can go to YouTube, our YouTube site, and find the meeting there, if you want to go back and watch it again.
Thank you, Karen.
September
Karen, whenever you
13th.
speak, it's always like it's coming from heaven. It's like,
Thanks, Paul.
That voice?
because you speak so rarely, it's like, who's talking to me?
I'm hoping that I sound like the ladies on Saturday Night Live, the Christmas episode. They're on the radio.
It's amazing how far off task we can get.
We sure got off track there.
He's up for election in January. Administrator Casey, you look contemplative there.
Well, I just want to talk a little bit about a few things. And you're correct when you say the contractors, you have to take with a grain of salt. You have to take them with a lot of grains of salt. Contractors are only gonna come here when they can make a profit, and they know the market and they know what they need to do. And they're gonna tell you that they need more. That's just the business. We understand that.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to be cautious with the density. But the other thing that I want to make sure that we consider if you change the densities is open space. I think that that often gets overlooked when we're talking about development. And park space and open space is important to a community. Trails, we get the trails in because we demand them on a staff level to put them in. But I think we need to really talk about open space and parks, and possibly looking at whatever the formula is for parks and have that dedicated. And does that need, as you get denser, the land disappears and you get more people and you have less place for those people to spread out and have a place to go recreate, whether it's a passive recreation or whether it's an active. So in your discussion, I just would hope that we talk a little bit about open space and parks when we talk about density.
And we haven't really required a lot in the way of sidewalks and trails. And that, I think, needs to change as we're working through this.
No, and I'm a proponent of sidewalks, both sides. That's just me, but, I would take my 3-year-old out and learn how to ride a bike. I want to be in front of my house. I don't want to be in the middle of the street. And trails, and again, I go back to the strategic planning process we had that identified parks and trails as one of the larger needs or larger wants, and we need to continue to try to focus on that as development comes in, so.
Along those lines, Nathan's asking, we want to know, do we know how many communities in development require sidewalks on both sides of the street?
Are you talking about developments within the city of Forest Lake or other communities?
No, because we haven't had any, I don't think, but
I would have to do some research to find which communities require sidewalks on both sides. I don't know that off the top of my head. Jane, do you have any ideas about communities that require sidewalks on both sides?
Okay, I just broke it. Yeah, most of the time I see those in larger communities. Rochester is an example. Suburban or emerging edge communities similar to Forest Lake, you don't see that very much, although I think it's becoming more prevalent because as people are purchasing homes, younger families, they're looking for sidewalks and more walkability. So usually you find a sidewalk somewhere, whether it's on one side or a trail system or something. So you're going to see more of that and probably going to hear more requests for that kind of thing.
where does Parks and Trails sit? They've been looking at a master plan. Have we get anywhere? Is it worth having, telling them
I
come
think
and
at some point
join us?
there should be a discussion with Parks and Trails. I'm not sure they're quite focused yet on master planning and parks and what they should be and what they shouldn't be doing. I recently made a small change in that staffing wise is Dave Adams is going to get it more into the park development side of the equation because he's a little more experienced and maybe have some more focus on where parks should be and how big they should be and things like that. So hopefully we'll get a little more clarity as we work through that. But no, we don't really have a great definition of where parks should be or what the plan is. We have a master plan, but it was never followed. I mean, it's the truth. We have it from 2012 or 13 or something, I think.
No, we put a lot of time and a lot of map drawing into it when we developed the comp plan.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember several specific folks drawing and adding stuff and the things that Eric suggested up around Cranberry Lake and North Shore Trail. Which made a lot of sense. The trick is getting from the line on the map to the place I can walk or bike.
Yeah, that's the challenge. We do have the document that was drafted, I think it was 2013, 14, whatever, that we could follow that, and it's probably still very applicable today because we really haven't changed that much as far as the number of houses a bit, but I think we can go back to that, and the challenge there is to convince or to encourage, I should say, the developers to follow some of that as well. And I think that's an important piece of your MX discussion here to make sure that we're looking at that as well.
How do we stack up in our park dedication, especially as we go to consider higher density? Our formula, I don't know, remember
Yeah,
what it is.
I don't know what the formula is. I mean, in the last, I don't know, before I was here, the park commission was instructed by council or whoever that just take the money. Well, that's fine, and put it into park dedication fees. My view is that you should really concentrate on getting the land because land disappears. You can always get money, you can't get the land. Or if you want to get land later on, it's more expensive. We need to look at the impact fees or park dedication fees and the ratio of how much parkland is dedicated versus how many houses are built. We should go back. I don't know what that is offhand.
There's a 10% requirement for developable land.
Pardon me?
And Paul, historically, we may have gotten some properties, but we have not done a good job historically at putting usable things on those properties, even if it's something open like maybe a soccer or lacrosse field, or I know that there are a lot of folks that have been asking for dog parks, and then when we do have equipment, we are very, very poor at funding the maintenance of our parks.
Oh, no doubt.
We have a history there.
And that's a big challenge for us along with the streets. I mean, we've got a lot of needs and no real way to get there, but we're working on the parks as well as we can, streets and parks. So, yeah, we do. Susan, I agree with everything you said. That we even if we get land, that we don't put anything on it, or we haven't equipped it the way we want it to be. Even if it's just a passive park that has a trail around it that people can walk around it with their dog. So, we need to do more there as well.
And it's not just Forest Lake. I work for a city right now that is 234 years behind in their street reconstructions.
Oh, they're pre-street.
Now, the streets that we should be reconstructing, instead of being on a 30 to 60 year cycle, we're on about a 234 year cycle.
Mike?
Does the parks and trails, do they meet with developers at all before they come to us, so they can kind of have an idea where these trails are coming from and going to? And
Yeah, during the concept phase that comes to staff first, we meet with the developers and we have our own input on what we believe the trails should be and where a park should be. We've been trying to be smart on that. And then it does go to the park commission for their, not approval, but their.
but the city looks over it first also, so that they
Right.
know that this
Right.
trail ends here. If there's a
And-
development, it has to connect
Yes,
somehow.
Yes, and we have currently 5 housing developments in the pipeline somewhere. And we meet with all of those and recommend where trails should be and where parks should be. And sometimes when we look at parks, we try to put them in so you have 4 different owners and develop a property. We'll try to put it in an upper corner, for example, so that we know when this one develops, we'll put it right next to it, and when this one, and so that if you get 3 acres apiece, all of a sudden you go from a 3 to a 12-acre park once that's all filled in. So we're trying to be smart about it and locate them right. But we're also, the real key to trails is the connectivity. You gotta connect them. I mean,
And that's also your open space too. If you can put that park,
Yep.
next to some wetlands and all that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
so yeah, so it is in the concept phase, and we do look at that, and then the park commission looks at that as well.
Other information we would like?
Well, when I was looking at these charts, and, I'm new, so I looked at the table, table 2.7, and then I went to the table 2.12. And there seem to be different categories listed for the same 22,726 acres. So as a new person, I'm trying to figure out, like, if you're calling something multifamily, and multifamily isn't over on the same type of chart on a different thing that's supposed to be representing the same 22,000 acres, what's going on there?
Okay. And part of it is what's our existing, and what we're discussing is what should it be. So 2.7 is the existing land use, characteristics, the percent, and Jane, help me, when was this done?
So 2016 would have been that existing data.
Okay, and since 2016, we've had some significant developments, some significant changes. And then 214 is the anticipated. What do we think it's gonna be in the future?
Okay,
All right, so those two charts do look a little different, and there are some things that are not in there, like the open water, we don't expect that one to change.
right, but if you look at the airport, I don't think the airport's going anywhere. And so it really should reflect on table 212. Because it didn't go anywhere. It's probably gonna be an airport still in the future, I would think. And even if we keep the percentages, like if we're changing something to nothing, then it can stay there with a 0% to suggest that this used to exist, it's not in our plan, and it's going away. So just so that somebody who's looking at this knows where we were, where we want to go, and where we're going. Because as we change the titles of things, we can say, oh, that's completely going away. But if we change the title, maybe it didn't go away at all.
Good point.
So, it would help to understand what stuff really was and what it's going to be. And the only way I think you can do that is if you keep some of the headers, like all things equal as far as the headers go.
I think Nathan.
I just had one additional comment on that, and one of the things that drives some of the decisions in terms of information provided in the comp plan is actually Met Council requirements. So in certain charts and tables that you see, they are actually requesting a specific type of information to be shown. So in terms of the existing snapshot, that's kind of, obviously it's accomplishing one thing and the other table is accomplishing another, but yeah, point well taken.
Other information we would like from the city, or that would help guide this discussion, other information?
Well, can you require a builder to think about the idea of housing that would be more amenable to seniors? And that be part of the plan, because I think that the builder that was here the last time, he only talked about lot size and houses, but not ultimately who would be in them. And then not that that really matters, but houses can be built with one level where they're not gonna make probably as much money because it's less to sell, but that would be good for the community, I think, to have places where seniors can get one level type housing for themselves if that's what they want.
One of the developers that was at the joint meeting, I think he pretty much specialized in senior. And he's just doing development, primarily detached townhome. Don't know how close they were to here.
There's some by the airport, the one level ramblers, whatever you wanna call them for seniors.
The garden villa thing.
Yeah, something like that. And then up in the Horse by the high school there, that Lipizan area, they have the detachable townhomes. Some of those are 2-story, some are one, with garages.
Well, you're right, that's one of the products
What
that
you have to look for.
we need to
Think about it.
get in here, and do they need as much land? Would be one of the discussions, right?
One thing I just want to offer up as just an interesting observation is that the term villas is really nebulous at the moment. It's not really well decided what that really means. The city code doesn't also prescribe a definition for like detached townhomes as an example. So something to just think about, I guess.
And one of the things I would add to your point about encouraging them to think about that style of housing, you will see that. I've seen that in more and more of the development applications we're looking at, and regardless of the community, but what they don't call it anymore is senior housing. they call it things like the villas, or, I don't know, they'll have various names, but the characteristics are, they're basically like detached townhomes on much smaller lots with a homeowners association to
Single
take
level.
care of maintenance, quite often slab on grade, not necessarily smaller, but I guess that's, you know,
Single level.
downsizing has a new meaning, you might say. But yes, but they are those, you know, the more accessible, the single level. Give you an example, my brother and his wife just built a house, a home, and set it up so that everything, like their main living area, their master bedroom, you know, was all on one level. Laundry's all on the same level, so had I think it's a walkout, but you know, they still have it set up so they can, eventually that'll be their retirement home. So that style of home is there, but they're not necessarily calling it that anymore.
Any further discussion?
Councilmember, how would you suggest that we get some additional community involvement in this discussion? And has this council inherited that big purple chunk down in the southwestern part of the city? And I don't know if that's a chunk that you all are still comfortable with or not. Nobody who is on the council now was on the council when that chunk appeared. And Jane will remember that it sort of appeared almost overnight.
So I can comment on your first question around getting resident input, which I think we've always struggled with in this city. So, you know, our online, you know, this coming to meetings, we're also finding folks are joining online more so, especially younger families with kids who don't want to come out at night. Surveys. I think I'm also thinking of the strategic plan that we did, and I'm pointing to Commissioner Gerard. While we didn't ask specifically about how you know, what did we want to see for housing, there was something in there. I mean, we got at a lot of the information around parks, like what do people value, you know, and a lot of that was, I think, some, you know, I mean, parks and trails really were what rose to the occasion for
That's
that
what it
one.
was.
It
Yeah.
was, and that's what that group basically said will attract more families here.
Yeah.
That's how that talk went a little bit there.
And that's probably one of the number one things, you know, people talk about for us or send us information on. You mentioned dog parks, and that's coming back.
Oh, it is back.
Yep. And then the second one, I can't speak for the whole council, and I can't see, what is that?
That's highway business.
I could speak to that,
Okay, you
because
speak
I
to
was
that.
at that meeting. So if we're gonna throw anyone under the bus, sort of short guy up here up front. The thought process behind this was the 35 corridor, and that if the exit that MnDOT is planning goes to 180th, this was thought to be an ideal area for commercial business. It's not heavily developed now. And if you, and I'll have Nathan pull up the Musil map too, but, so that was the thought. If it goes to 180th, it would be ideal. Now, there was one camp that says it's gonna go to 180th because there's wetlands to cross because it's my understanding that MnDOT wants to have both 35E and W to have exits at this. And to do that at 170th, there's a lot more wetland to cross. I'm not saying which way they would do it. So the thought was that we would put a placeholder for industrial down in this corner, knowing that when you look at the Musaline, I don't even think it shows much before about 2040 before any of that's really in there. Is that
That's not on there.
what you're showing here, Nathan? We're in the 2020
Blue.
currently, right?
Yeah, blue is 2040.
So the thought was, the next comprehensive plan, by then, the expectation was that MnDOT would have made a decision, and then you could realistically plan if you want this to be more dense, or however you would want it. But just as a placeholder, if we didn't do it now, the thought was that we would never be able to have a large area for industrial. That was the thinking behind it.
What would best help council as you're thinking about these things, because we do want to help you. I think it would be interesting to, there's some stuff you can do with surveys, online surveys now. We're doing a bunch of them on design stuff and things like that are possible, but the trick is making this understandable to folks. That will be a challenge.
I agree. I think the average person isn't gonna understand or read the map, or even just knowing what it is just offhand. It has to be explained, and not necessarily explained, the questions have to be asked in a certain way.
But I don't want to ask questions in a leading manner either.
No,
That's,
No.
that's not what I'm after. What I need to think about that a little bit.
This is
I-
why this is
I have
just-
I got a couple of things that I'm thinking about here, and maybe I'm way off base, but when we're thinking about, like, doing any kind of a survey of our community, can we use, like, the city billing system for the water bills to send out a survey?
Sure, we probably could.
Okay,
Realizing that there are a lot of us that don't have city water or city sewer.
but that would at least give us, like, we know who the people who are to get them, it might be just an indicator of those kinds of people. And then the other thing is, let's say we have a subject like this, that many citizens don't understand. Paul explained it very nicely to me. Could we start doing little info bites on Forest Lake happenings about the comprehensive plan that are videotaped, which might then prompt somebody to come to a meeting, either understanding it totally or not getting it all, but prompt input from that person?
Are you
I think,
asking-
I think anything's possible, right? In my view of this, I think that in order to solicit public input, I think we have to have a little better focus on where we're going first. So what I would recommend is that you focus on what kind of recommendations you're kind of leaning towards, because one of the things you can't do to get public input is say, one from column A, one from column B, one from column C. You have to say, here's what we're thinking, here's what we'll do to new development. It'll be 60-foot lots versus 80-foot lots. It'll be this. I think you just have to coalesce your ideas, and then we can start figuring out how to communicate that and get some input off of that.
Kind of like when Donovan gave preliminary idea where the lots could go. I think the normal theory is, right, if you give them a blank sheet of paper, we'll go nowhere. If we
Correct.
give them something, they can throw mud at it.
Yeah, you really do have to, that's absolutely correct.
And those pictures that Donovan put together were good. They were helpful. In terms of information that would be helpful, I think that, something that would a little bit more carefully tie the two tables, 2.7 and 2.12 together, so that they were a little bit more in the, things like rural residential fell off of. Yeah, just so that we could have that. I would like some information about where we are with some of our really dense housing, how many housing units we're looking at. Are there, Mr. Casey mentioned that there are areas of the city where you are getting some significant development requests. Giving us an idea, not specifically, I don't want you to, give away any secrets, but what areas they are, what kinds of things developers are asking for right now, would be helpful. I'd like to know in other areas where they are increasing density, what are they doing with accessory dwelling units? In an area where you've got 6 to 8 dwelling units per acre, are you also allowing the accessory dwelling units? And how does that change things like parking requirements and driveways and things like that? There are other things that y'all are,
Can't remember what I asked for earlier.
but Nathan wrote it down.
Nathan writes stuff down, so life's good.
I do.
And Nathan, if you would take 1 minute before you get rid of my music screen and just refresh, and maybe for Geneva, since she's new, kind of what we're talking about with the MUSA and how that affects development.
Yeah, so the MUSA line is a water and sewer from the Met Council, and it's built out in stages, and that provides the opportunity for more dense development. So essentially when that gets extended outwards, then it enables more density to happen.
And it's a tool used by the Met Council to control what they're receiving down the lines. They want to know, kind of also try to control growth, so they can plan on when they have to put in more treatment or more pipes as far as the sewer goes. So they're trying to allow you to go when you get the density or you get a growth and you can prove that, you can go so far, they'll let you do that. But they want to try to control that so they can plan, and they can also upgrade facilities and know when they need to do that. So that's part of the reason why they do it.
Part of it also is for our own development, because we do, once you're off the main, that's all ours. So we don't want to develop 2 miles away from where the nearest sewer is. We want it to get as close to adjoining. Otherwise, it's probably not practical for the developer, for one, to be able to afford that much sewer pipe to run. So you try to somewhat rein it in, but not deprive people of being able to sell their property either.
Yeah, and most of the new development's going to be to the south, so that's where the land is, that's where it's coming.
We do have some stuff around the lakes that have access to sewer, but do not have access to water. And so some of those need to be larger lots, so you can stick a well on it.
In fact, I think if you lower that map a little bit, Nathan, right there. So the yellow does not have water for the most part, and the brown or the beige does. So the city, the original city had water in most of it, but almost all of the township does not have water.
The yellow area has sewer.
We have sewer, yep. but we don't have water. I'm a little bit hazy on some of the south side of the lake, right off 97 there, but,
There's nothing there.
yeah, so,
Remember we got that, we had that,
oh, yeah, yeah, there's no water there either.
there's no sewer there.
And as, I don't expect, and there's no plan to put water in around the lake.
Yeah, keep in mind this map is through 2040. That's not to say things won't change, but I think the idea is what is available now, and the staging is a couple of things, where the pipes are located, pipe sizes, capacity, and then in some cases, kind of our best guess, what's gonna go first, second, or third. But you're right about some, like the area up in the far northwest corner, as I recall, that there's some difficulty in serving that for a number of reasons. I don't remember, Ryan would know, but if it's pipe size or grade or something. But that's why you kind of have those two little gaps, and then as you go east, a lot of large lot development, that's difficult to, it's hard to extend sewer out and serve those lots. It's very expensive. Not, it's kind of not really cost effective. But there's other areas that maybe in the long term, as pipes are extended, maybe capacity is increased, potentially could be served. But again, this is sort of a 20 years picture, and in not very long from now, we'll be doing it again, and yeah. You and me both. But, I mean, yeah, the next round starts in 2025.
On that cheery note, is there any other information we would like?
Yeah. Now's the time to get off and run if you want. And then, 3 years.
We'll move on to our other then. Thank you all for participating in the discussion. And we have our esteemed councilperson Munson here tonight, so we'll start with you. Would you like to add anything, make any comments?
I'll give you two updates just from this past Monday's council meeting. We adopted the resolution for the County State Aid Highway 33 over by Menards for them to go on to their next phase, so the final plan. And then we also approved the city to move forward with hiring the community development director.
Okay. And this will take sort of part of Donovan's role, I believe?
Yeah, we will hire another Donovan or a planner as well, but the community development director should take a little bit more off of the development side of that, and hopefully the planner can focus on, it's more nuts and bolts things that we need to get done. For example, doing the zoning code and make it match the comprehensive plan would be a good thing.
Great. Do you remember what happened with the sign over at the truck dealer? They wanted to build a
The monument sign
Right.
for that trucking
monument
company.
versus, he wanted a pylon sign.
Like right across from the
Yeah,
Goodwill.
We said no.
Pardon me?
We said no.
We said no.
We said no.
I think we said no.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, we said no.
The Google does everything these days, so. Anything else you'd like to add?
No,
Well, thank you for coming this evening.
absolutely.
Administrator Casey, it's a pleasure to see you here again this evening.
It's a pleasure to be here. The only other thing I have, since you mentioned signs, we had a council member request that we start to look at the sign ordinance as it relates to the Highway 35 area where all the businesses are, and if believes there should be some kind of a change to make it more consistent, or we'll get it to you when we get there. We'll give you another task to do here.
It's one of our favorite signs.
Yeah, I think I think the sign ordinance is based on the lowest part of the roof or something, and do we want to do it that way? Or I think the thought was, why don't we just standardize it at a certain height? And we'll bring that back to you someday here.
I don't think there's a topic we have spent more time on.
Oh, signs are always fun. Absolutely. Signs are good.
Questions for Administrator Casey or Councilperson Munson?
Anything on the golf course? I haven't seen anything.
Thanksgiving, right around Thanksgiving.
Good.
Start to build that building.
Nathan?
Pat stole my thunder on the signs piece, so
Sorry.
that's okay.
Should have talked to you beforehand. Well, it just came up, so.
No, we anticipate having another sign variance request on an upcoming agenda, so it's top of mind.
When will our next meeting be, as long as we got you? Will we have one in November?
November 10th.
Yes,
November 10th?
scheduled for November 10th, and then
Is that the only
December-
November one then, because of,
That is the only November meeting, and then there's only one in December.
Oh, shucks.
Probably the second week in December.
all right. Karen, anything?
The voice from heaven, I have nothing else.
All right, we'll go down to commissioners. Mike?
Well, since I brought up the sign part, I know I'm glad this council backed us on that, because there's, for various reasons, but I'm just glad they backed us on that one. I'm not real happy with this company that put a fence up and blacktopped their whole property without any permits or anything. So I'm just voicing my opinion. I'm not happy with it. I don't like the way it went down, but is the city, I'm just gonna say, if the city's gonna do something, do it. Because we have, you know, we have to do something. That's what we're here for. Otherwise, it's the wild, wild west out there.
Don't disagree.
And if they hire another building inspector or enforcement officer or somebody, I'd like to see maybe Tuesday through Saturday, or at least Saturday mornings. Just drive around, follow all the dump trucks, the cement trucks, and you're gonna see the weekend warriors. So that's it for me.
If we're gonna enforce on the new folks, then we
Enforce on
need to
everybody.
enforce on our existing CUPs that have not been in compliance for low onto these
Well, look at,
decades.
look what, right up here at the stoplights.
Yes.
That big eyesore. I know when they were talking a few years back about planting some trees in there, I was trying to help Ben out. I met with all the contractors. I mean, I spent hours and hours with these people to come up with ideas, and nothing's been done. So, that's it for me.
Susan?
Nothing, sir.
Do you?
Nothing.
I have nothing. Based on that, the chair's looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. It's not available. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for participating tonight.